50 years before the revival of Freemasonry in 1666, there was the Fire of London, which had repercussions for the next 5 decades. From 1600 to 1612, there had been between 5,000 and 10,000 deaths from the plague every year in London. But it escalated so that in 1665, 65,000 people died from the plague, which was 1/5 of the population of London. Then in September 1666, a fire broke out in Pudding Lane in the south of the old city of London, and fanned by intense winds, quickly spread. It took 5 days to bring the fire under control. In all, about 13,000 buildings were destroyed, including St. Paul's Cathedral and 87 churches, covering an area of about 60% of the city. But on the other hand, the fire had burned away slums, open sewers, and the remnants of the plague. In 1667, the first Building Act was passed, dictating that future buildings in London had to be made from stone, not wood, with only door and window frames allowed in wood. And in 1677, the Worshipful Company of Masons was incorporated to help organize labor and materials. The Stuart kings identified themselves with King Solomon, as he was both head of church and state and ruled by divine right. Their palace in Whitehall was their King Solomon's palace, and both Charles II and James II wanted the new St. Paul's Cathedral to be a King Solomon's temple, resurrecting London from the ashes as the New Jerusalem, where the second coming of Christ would occur. Charles's ambition was that England in the 17th century would become for Christians God's chosen country, and with London as its New Jerusalem. Charles II saw the Great Fire as an opportunity to rebuild London to match the splendor of Paris with wide boulevards like the Champs-Élysées. Starting as a Roman town in 50 AD, London had grown over many centuries, expanding organically without town planning. As a result, the streets were narrow, and by the 1670s, it was thought to be unfit as the capital of England. Charles envisioned London as not only being the governmental centre, but also a spiritual centre. He started renovations to the city to establish the ideal Christian city, the New Jerusalem, with the centre of this spiritual city being St. Paul's Cathedral, for the sole purpose of preparing the world for the second coming of Christ. The king wanted London to be redesigned not only on spiritual but also cosmic principles, with St. Paul's Cathedral as the axis mundi. This axis served as a celestial pillar connecting heaven and earth, but had been destroyed with the collapse of the spire of the old St. Paul's Cathedral. By rebuilding the cathedral and the axis, man was then reconnected to the greater consciousness of heaven. As I explain in my book, St. Paul's was rebuilt using the Tree of Life as a template. And the Tree of Life was also considered for a new street plan for the city, though Charles finally rejected it due to the cost of buying up privately held land. St. Paul's Cathedral was completed in 1711, and the revival of Freemasonry was proposed in 1716. To the English, even now, one of the most important pieces of religious music is the anthem Jerusalem. It was written by William Blake in 1808, who lived during the monarchy of the House of Hanover. The last 4 lines of the anthem are, "I will not cease from mental fight, nor shall my sword sleep in my hand, till we have rebuilt Jerusalem in England's green and pleasant land." So it can be seen that the idea of making London a spiritual centre was still alive 150 years after the Great Fire of London. King Solomon's temple is very important to Freemasons for two reasons. Firstly, it represents a metaphor for the craft, and secondly, it represents the aspirations of Freemasons. The number 3 is also important to Freemasons, representing, among other things, the Holy Trinity, the 3 degrees of the fraternity, and also the 3 stages of life. As King Solomon's temple was destroyed twice, the 3rd temple is for Freemasons to build. This is not a physical place, but rather a spiritual one, a place in a Mason's heart where he will meet God, as explained in the Bible. Thank you.